Some simple math can tell us about the optimal price. We know that the firm maximizes profit when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. We also know that marginal revenue equals price times parentheses 1 plus 1 over the absolute value of the elasticity. Therefore, when the firm maximizes profit, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. We can substitute in our equation involving price and price elasticity for marginal revenue. We can divide both sides by the term in the parentheses. We can rearrange terms in the denominator, and then we can use the law of division to find that price equals marginal cost times the absolute value of the elasticity divided by parentheses the absolute value of the elasticity minus 1. For example, suppose the absolute value of price elasticity is 2 and the marginal cost is $20. Then the optimal price will be, again, marginal cost times absolute value of V divided by parentheses absolute value of V minus 1, close parentheses. 20 is marginal cost. 2 is the absolute value of V. So we'll get 40 divided by 1 of $40. When the price elasticity is 2 and marginal cost is 20, the optimal price, the price that maximizes profit, is $40. The optimal price increases only when consumers become more responsive to changes in price or when marginal cost increases. The optimal price increases when consumers become less responsive to changes in price because the optimal markup of price over marginal cost increases. Consumers become less responsive to changes in price when the availability of close substitutes decreases and when the extent to which the good is a complement for other goods increases. As consumers become less responsive to changes in price, we say that demand is becoming less elastic. This means the absolute value of E is decreasing. Demands with elasticity of 3 are less elastic than demands with elasticity of 4. Demands with elasticity of 0.3 are less elastic than demands with elasticity of 0.8. Less elastic means the same thing as more inelastic. Now, why does the lack of close substitutes make the demand less elastic? The reason the demand becomes less elastic is that the lack of close substitutes makes moving to another good or service more difficult. Consumers become less responsive to changes in price when the market is more broadly defined. They have more close substitutes for Coca-Cola than for soft drinks, and more close substitutes for soft drinks than for beverages. Frobe's rule of thumb is that the brand price elasticity is approximately equal to the industry price elasticity divided by the brand share. This tells us that the optimal margin of price over marginal cost increases as the firm's product becomes more distinct from its competitors. The more differentiated, the more unique, the more distinct your product is. Actually, more unique is an oxymoron. The more distinct your product becomes, the less responsive your consumers will tend to be to changes in your price, which means the higher the optimal margin is, and in turn, holding marginal cost constant, the higher your price will be. Also, advertising that stresses the distinct nature of the product usually makes demand more inelastic and thereby increases the optimal markup. Being complementary to more goods and services makes not buying the firm's product more difficult for people who want to consume the other goods and services. Microsoft Windows might be a good example. I'm not an expert, but I've heard that Windows is not the best operating system. But the reason I like it and the reason that my demand is fairly inelastic to price is that it works with so many other products that I use. If I didn't have Microsoft Windows, I couldn't run a lot of other software that's tied to it. Price decreases for the opposite reasons. The optimal price decreases when consumers become more responsive to changes in price and when marginal cost decreases. The optimal price decreases when consumers become more responsive to changes in price because the optimal markup decreases. The optimal margin, that's the word I want, marginal margin decreases. Consumers become more responsive to changes in price when the availability of close substitutes increases and when the extent to which the good is a complement for other goods decreases. As consumers become more responsive to changes in price, we say the demand becomes more elastic, which is the same as saying that demand has become less inelastic. The reason that the demand becomes more elastic as availability of close substitutes diminishes is that the availability of close substitutes makes moving to another good or service easier. The more close substitutes I have, the easier it is for me to escape a price increase by simply switching from one product to another. Being complementary to fewer goods and services makes not buying the firm's product easier for people who want to consume the other goods and services. Thereby, when I raise price, I don't worry about jumping to another product because I'm not foregoing consumption of other goods and services that are complementary. Advertising that stresses pricing usually attracts consumers who are more sensitive to price and thereby decreases the optimal markup. One point, something I don't want you to miss is the optimal price is not affected by changes in fixed cost. The responsiveness of consumers to changes in price and marginal cost, those two things, and only those two things, at least for this part of the course, determine the optimal price.